Good evening, everyone, and welcome to I Am New Orleans, Early Learning Teachers, The Bridge to a Brighter Future. This is a series being put on by the Kellogg Foundation, and thank you to them and all of our partners tonight for who are participating in it. My name is Kenny Francis. I am tonight's moderator. I am the Director of Policy, I'm the Director of Policy and Child Advocacy at Agenda for Children. I'm also a former early learning teacher myself. I taught pre-K4 in the city at a variety of schools. I have the pleasure of having a series of panelists with me tonight who are early learning teachers who will be talking with all of you. In a moment, I'm going to give them all the opportunity to introduce themselves. So I'm going to start with Bryce-Shanae Gresham. She is a teacher at Wilcox Academy of Early Learning. Bryce-Shanae, can you say hello to everyone and tell us what ages you teach and how long have you been teaching?
Hi, everyone. I'm Bryce-Shanae Gresham, and I teach pre-K3. I've been working in early child care since 2018, and I love it.
Thank you for being with us, Bryce-Shanae. I want to introduce Barbie DeVoe. She's a teacher over at Abiona House Child Discovery Center. Hi, Barbie.
Hi, I'm Barbie DeVoe. I currently teach one-year-olds at Abiona House, where I've been working for about 2 years, but I have approximately 8 years of experience working with children from pre-K to 6th grade.
Thanks for joining us, Barbie. We also have Brandy Sanchez from Kids of Excellence. Hi, Brandy.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brandy Sanchez. I work with the infants and one-year-olds, and I've been working with children for about 2 years now.
Thank you for being with us, Brandy. And last but not least, we have Rochelle Wilcox from the Executive Director at the Wilcox Academy of Early Learning. Good evening, Rochelle. How are you?
Good evening. Again, I'm Rochelle Wilcox, the Executive Director of Wilcox Academy of Early Learning. We have 3 centers in the greater New Orleans area. We serve infants from 2 months all the way to 8 years old. We also have summer camp during the summer, but we're excited to be here.
Thanks for being with us. And with that, we're going to switch gears a little bit. Before we get into the panel discussion with these really dedicated women, we're going to be viewing a video by the HB Group, and we're going to cue that up for you right now.
What I want for them is that no one will stifle their fire. What I want for them is to be on an equal playing field. I have to say that Louisiana is usually like last on everything, but when it comes to early care and education, which I just found out, we're like number 8. And it has a lot to do with starting with that Act 3 and getting funding in. And this is what we know is going to be the biggest investment.
We understand through research, through trauma, that this is where you should invest, because $1 invested into early childhood is $7 to $8 back into society.
We know that infants and toddlers, which is where the hugest gap is in accessibility, it costs a lot more to provide a quality slot, but parents can't afford it. In fact, what it costs in these centers that are providing quality, it's costing them closer to $12,000 a child. They're probably only charging $7,500. And so then the question is, what are they doing? And in many cases, they're about to go out of business. You know, the director doesn't take a salary one month. I mean, it's a real struggle.
The higher our quality got, the more we had to charge parents. And so we started to see that, unfortunately, the quality of our center was starting to marginalize the people that needed it the most, like our low-income families. The parents that we serve want the best for their little people. There is nothing different than an affluent parent and a parent in poverty. They want the absolute best for their children.
If you think about children in New Orleans and how they're faring, we know that close to 40% of children in New Orleans are in poverty.
Right now, they said a single mom with 1 child needs to make about $65,000 just to survive for rent and the basic necessities of life. The majority of our families are making less than $14,000.
You know, we need to make sure that all of our children have access. We can do it. We can raise those funds. There are people that want to be able to invest in early care and education.
So at the state level this year, The legislature, for the first time in 10 years, put state money into early care and education. Literally, a city council person sitting at the table, and as well as the advocates, the providers, the parents,
And the business people.
and the business people talking about what's our vision for the city for early care and education, and how are we going to get there. And through that work, we started with getting $750,000 of just city general funds appropriated, and that funded 50 slots. We got it doubled, and we're able to increase it to 112 slots. And what's so exciting is not only is it targeted to infant toddlers where we need it most, it's funded at $12,000 a child.
It was a huge moment. It was a huge investment. I think it was our way of saying we're in the game too, and we're all in, and we're putting our money where our mouth is, frankly.
What that said to early care and education is, you matter. You're not just a babysitter. What you're doing is preparing little people for the rest of their lives, not just their academic journey, but their social and emotional journey.
That's the only important thing, is children. Because that's the whole future. And we got here because they thought that they could get by without educating black and brown children. The only solution is these children. And if we double down on these children, New Orleans is gonna be Mecca.
What I want for them is to have it all. What I want for them is that no one will stifle their fire, that no one will make them feel less than. I want them to run the world. They can do it all. And I don't want that for them, just them. I want that for them families. People say it's cliche when we say they are our future, but they are. That's what I want. The sky, the moon, the limit, everything. That's what I want.
It's hard to watch that video and not get choked up, especially with you at the end there, Rochelle. If you're just joining us, again, my name is Kenny Francis. I'm with Agenda for Children. I am our moderator tonight. Before we get into our panelists, I'm going to give us a little bit of framing, talking a little bit more about some of the things that you just heard in that video. As was talked about, research has shown time and time again that the importance of high quality adult-child interactions is critically important for our youngest learners, and that every moment is a learning opportunity, and that kids need adult caregivers who are skilled and attuned to maximizing on this time. And that's what our early childhood teachers are so important and so skilled at doing. We also know that 80% of brain development happens for a child by the time they're 3, with that number going up to 90% by the time they're 4. And so it's not an understatement to say that this is an all-important time in our children's lives. And a lot of the negative outcomes we see around educational attainment and life outcomes from kids that don't have access to these quality services, they start to make sense when you learn the science behind why it's so important. So before we get into talking to the panelists and hearing their thoughts, I want to talk a little bit about why is it so expensive? And we're going to talk a little bit about the cost of quality and what the reality is when we talk about early childhood learning, not just here in New Orleans, but across the state. So we have a few slides I'm going to go through. I promise it won't be long. And then we'll get right into the discussion. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was the cost of quality versus the average market rate, which is also known as what you can actually charge parents. So what you can see on your screen right now is that there's quite a gap between what the cost of providing quality care is and what can actually charge to parents. In Louisiana, it's estimated that the cost of quality for providing care for an infant is around $20,000. But meanwhile, in New Orleans, you can charge about $7,800 to families. So that's a little bit over $12,000 of a gap between what you can charge families and what you can reasonably expect people to pay, and what the actual cost of quality on the provider side is. So there's a significant gap there between the cost of the services and what you can get for the services. If you look at 4-year-olds, the other side of the spectrum, the cost of quality is estimated almost $12,000 a year. And again, the average market rate is about $7,800. And so there's still there about a $4,000 gap. So when you look at the economics of a childcare center, you're looking at a reality where regardless of what they're charging parents, it's going to be lower than what their actual true costs are. And those costs have to get subsidized somewhere. And so one of the questions that we're asking ourselves is, well, where does it get subsidized? And that's where we're going to go to the next slide. And so we wanted to talk a little bit about what we call the affordability problem. So in New Orleans, according to the Census Bureau, the median income is about $41,000, a little bit more than that. The cost of childcare, going back to those numbers I just spoke to, if you had one infant in your household and you made the median income in New Orleans, would be about 19% of your household income. Economists tell us that to build a sustainable family budget, you shouldn't be spending more than 10% of your family's budget on childcare. So if you just had one infant, you would already 9% over what you should be spending. That's going to place a strain on the rest of your finances. If you have two children, if you have an infant and a 4-year-old, the cost of childcare in New Orleans on a median income would be 38% of your household income. That doesn't leave a lot of room for things like rent, for food, for any of the other basic necessities. And so what ends up happening is that families simply cannot afford childcare. And that we see time and time again when we survey families. A survey that was done by our partners, the Louisiana Policy Institute for Children, this fall in 2020, found that in a survey of thousands of parents in the Southeast Louisiana area, 47% of respondents were concerned about being able to pay for childcare. And so the simple reality is we simply cannot charge parents more. It is already extremely difficult for families to afford this care. We know how important the care is and we know how much it costs. And the cost cannot be passed on to parents. As was said in a video by Rochelle, the higher you raise the cost, the more you're pricing out families who really need it. And we're already at a reality where most families who need childcare cannot afford it. And you're talking about just the top percentage of earners who are able to reasonably afford it without any sort of assistance. So where's another place that we could look to try to make up this gap I'm talking about? Well, another place is you could say, well, how about you lower the ratios? What you could do is put more children in a room with less adults. The current ratios are 1-4 for infants and 1-10 for 4-year-olds. And this is a state mandated regulation by the Department of Education. And I don't know how many of you out there who are watching tonight have actually worked in childcare before, but 1 adult to 4 infants is already a lot. If you don't believe me, I encourage you to try it. Try and take care of 4 infants with any sort of quality and safety on your own. And imagine putting more infants in that room, or imagine putting, I don't know, or again, I don't know if anyone's ever hung out with 10 4-year-olds. Imagine having more than that by yourself and being able to accomplish anything, let alone education. I would challenge you to even just try to go to the bathroom with them with that many kids by yourself. It would be a very difficult task to do indeed. And so unfortunately, where it comes down to is we have a reality where we have subsidized this all-important system on the backs of the dedicated women, and a large majority women of color, who do this highly skilled and very essential work. Over 90% of the early childhood workforce is women, and we pay them wages that are nowhere near worth what they're providing to us. If we go to the next slide, we're going to look at the difference between what an average kindergarten teacher makes and what an average childcare teacher makes. The average kindergarten teacher salary in Louisiana is $45,000 about, and that's not enough. Having taught kindergarten, I can tell you that's not enough. In childcare, they're making about half of that. They're making $20,000 on average. And I want to note here that it's important to note that childcare teachers typically work 12 months a year, whereas kindergarten teachers and other K-12 teachers typically work 9 months a year. And when you work in a K-12 school, you typically have access to a more extensive benefits package, including pensions, sick days, paid holidays. And so as a result, when you take those things into account, and that you take into account that most childcare workers don't have access to that, the disparity between pay is even greater. And so that's what we're here to talk about tonight. Is we're here to talk about the experiences of early childhood teachers, and talk about the work that they do and like what we can do to ensure that this all important workforce has the resources and support that they need to do this work that we know is so essential. And so I'm going to bring back in our panelists here, and I'm going to start with my first question, and we're just going to do sort of round robin here. So Barbie, I'm going to start with you this time. My first question for y'all tonight is, what do you think the biggest misconceptions that people have about childcare is, and what do you want them to know about the work that you do?
I would say one of the biggest misconceptions that people have is, as Miss Rochelle mentioned in the video, that some people seem to think that we're babysitters, and especially because there is such a high turnover rate in this field, people seem to think that we're not in it. We don't see this as a career. We're not in here and committed to the job. When, in my experience with my coworkers, that's not the case at all. We are all extremely dedicated to our job, and taking care of these children and helping them learn and grow.
Thank you for that, Barbie. Same question for you, Brandy.
I would have to agree with Miss Barbie because, yeah, most parents believe that we're babysitters and that we just supervise their children throughout the day. And I don't think that's true. We help them learn new skills and develop as a person and just be more social.
Thank you for that, Brandy. Same question for you, Bryce.
I would have to agree that it is saddening to say that the parents do think that we're babysitters, but there's this other notion that they're not doing that they can't do the same quality of work from school to home. Like sometimes my parents will say, "Oh, they're just doing that for you," or they're not going to do that for me. So that type of idea has to change because the same tools that I do at school, I want to give to the parents so that we can have this all around learning. So the concept of they're only doing that for you at school, it,
I want
that
to
needs to stop.
I want to pull on that thread a little bit more that all three of you mentioned about sort of a misunderstanding of what you're actually doing all day and what your day looks like. I'm going to come right back to you, Bryce Shanae, on this one. Can you tell us a little bit about the age range that you work with, and what exactly does education look like with the kids that you're working with?
So I'm working with pre-K 3. So we do I do lesson plans with them. Well, not with them, but I have lesson plans to teach them lessons. And we have themes. So right now we're just coming from shapes and we talk about colors and numbers, and we're moving on to bugs and cycles of things like the life cycle of a bug or the life cycle of a butterfly. And we've only been on this for like 2 days, and my students have already started to draw the life cycle and remember the life cycle inside of art. So it's digging deeper on what they're interested in. I know that they love bugs. So we like went outside and we did some science. We were exploring, looking for life inside of the dirt. We found worms, we found roots. And so that let us know as scientists and as teachers, I like to say, we can plant our garden inside of this dirt. This dirt is ready for us to plant inside of. So basically just nurturing what they're already interested in and helping them to become good citizens in our classroom and in the world. So I always talk about we're all friends. We're all we can all have gentle hands. We can all use gentle feet and words. And so just having them feel that, even the different person can be your friend. Even the person that may not have good listening ears is still your friend. So just nurturing what they're interested in and helping them to understand that in order to be a part of a family, which is our class, we have to choose to listen. And so just pushing that issue of, choosing to listen.
Thank you for that, Bryce Shanae. Brandy, over to you. Same question for you. With the age ranges that you work with, what does a day look like? What are you guys working on?
We also have lesson plans that me and my coworker create for the children. So right now we're in the Three Little Pigs, and like today's lesson, we help them teach them how to blow and huff and puff like a wolf. So we used something that they were really interested in, which was like bubbles. So we let them blow and teach because some children still don't know how to blow. So that's something that they're very interested in, but is also something that they can learn at the same time.
Thank you for that. Same question for you, Barbie.
So I'm with 1 to 2 year olds right now, and similar to my co-panelists, we create lesson plans, both group-based lesson plans for the entire class that are activities, as well as individual lesson plans to track their development and work on certain milestones and goals. And on a typical day, I mean, we'll discuss anything from counting up to 20 ABCs. We work at a child-led center, and so we go off of what the children are really focused on. One of those things has been last names lately. So they've all been learning each other's last names, our last names. It's brought up a lot of really cool conversations about families. Like we have 2 brothers in the class, and we're like, oh my gosh, brothers, some of you have brothers. And they get real excited about that. And just a lot of social emotional guidance, helping them through conflicts, using gentle hands, using their words to tell their friends no, rather than screaming or hitting or biting or anything like that. How to eat at a table, how to just exist in a group of people, like skills that will carry over as they get older and continue to be a member of society in all these different areas of life.
So when I hear you guys talk, having taught early childhood myself, I'm hearing early numeracy skills, I'm hearing early literacy skills, social emotional learning skills, all the skills that we would normally associate with kindergarten readiness. A big talking point in our state is how abysmal the kindergarten readiness numbers are. And I would posit that it's largely due to the lack of access we have statewide and even here locally to children having high quality educators like you in their earliest years. And so when people think about this time and they think about, well, it's lagniappe or it's extra, it's actually essential. It is the foundation for our children's success. And you're hearing what the hard work that is put into really intentionally planning these lessons to prepare children for their future. This is the work that they're doing every day. A sort of related question to this, and Barbie, I'm going to come to you first on this one, is a big question that folks often ask about childcare is, well, what exactly is a child going to have access to resources wise in a formalized childcare setting that they would if they were just say like at home? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I would say one of the hugest things is that when they are coming to school, this is a space that's created only for them. We're there to foster their development, their learning, but that room is theirs. Like they have their own cubbies. They know where to put their stuff before they're the age of 2, like their water cups, shoes, backpacks, all that. Everything is at their level and everything is placed in there specifically to be an educational tool. And along with the space being a part of the education, they are also learning from their peers every single day, whether it's someone who's right in their age range or, for example, we have an age gap where our oldest are about 27 months, our youngest hover around the 22-month mark. And so we can see these 2 children interacting in a way that they maybe wouldn't if they were at home by themselves or with siblings in a different age bracket. And this 27-month-old is learning how to be patient and empathetic with a younger child who's maybe not on his level yet. And this younger child is observing and mimicking what he sees from the older child in terms of language, mobility, sharing, stuff like that. So every day they come in and they learn from us, but they also learn from everything and everyone around them.
Thank you for that, Barbie. Brandy, same question for you. What sort of resources do you have in your classroom that you think that your kids will not have access to if they were in a different kind of setting?
Well, like Barbie said, the class is fit for them. So everything's at their level. Everything's age appropriate for them. So I just feel like when they come to school, they're able to be social, talk and play with peers that are around their age. And that's something that they can't really do at home unless they have siblings. But sometimes, they have siblings that are older, so it's a little more difficult.
Thank you for that, Brandy. Same question for you, Bryce.
So I know that inside of the classroom, well, inside of my classroom, we basically want to function as a family and as a team. And some of the parents are saying, they don't do this at home. They don't share at home. So what I can offer my kids in my class is a space for them to learn how to be a part of a team, how to be a part of a family, how to share, how to use your gentle hands. And I even have like a little funny tidbit. One of my kids went home to a parent and was like, we don't talk like that. We use our gentle voice. And so just showing them how they can, be amongst their peers and still be able to play together. That's what they're getting from the class. I know that the parent is the first teacher, so we're taking them from their parent to the next level of working in a group and working in a community. And they can use these tools, throughout life.
Nothing like a child modeling peaceful problem solving for you to get you all the way together. So I want to switch gears a little bit here and talk about the elephant in the room. We're talking about salaries, which is part of the conversation here. So I want you guys to aspire with me for a moment, and let's imagine that we can wave a magic wand and that tomorrow, what we can provide is all childcare teachers with a salary that's equivalent of what I mentioned before, what kindergarten teachers made. What would change for you, in your opinion, for you and your colleagues, if tomorrow you woke up and you were paid the same as K-12 teachers? And this time I'm going to start with you, Brandy.
Well, I would have at least some extra money to help and pay off my loans from school. I'm still paying. I guess just like take off less stress on myself with bills and rent, just like life necessities.
Brashane, what are your thoughts on that?
For me, I agree the stress level would go down. I would immediately invest in something so that I can basically secure a future for my children so that they would have something to work from, when they graduate or finish school. So investing in the stress level would go down.
Barbie, what do you think?
I would definitely schedule a lot of doctor's appointments that I've been putting it off, whether it's a therapist or a chiropractor, general practitioner, any of the places I feel like I haven't had the time or the funds to really prioritize, as well as definitely paying down the interest on my student loans, because that is just a looming cloud that can't really go away with the amount of money that I make right now.
Thank you for that. Rochelle, I want to bring you on this one because you've run your center for quite some time. When you talk with your teachers over time, what are some of the things that you've heard? If you could pay them more, what would change for them?
Their whole lifestyles. Teachers want, again, like I said in the video, there's nothing different from an affluent parent or a parent in poverty. That's the same thing with teachers. Teachers want to buy houses. They want to have a car. They want to not have to catch the bus. They want to be able to, if God forbid their child's arm breaks, they want to be able to take them to the hospital so they can get, care. The bottom line is, people don't want fancy things. They just want a decent lifestyle. They want to be able to care for their families. They want to be able to invest in their children's families, and they want to be able to do what they love, because oftentimes teachers have to leave the field that they love and go into a field that that can pay for the lifestyle that they want, that they deserve, not want, that they deserve and require.
Absolutely. And as I hear all four of you talk, I'm hearing themes like meeting basic needs, things like preventing toxic stress, things like being able to plan for the future, things like all of these things that would lead to more retention and less turnover. Because a stat that I'm going to throw out here for everyone is that we know that on average, year to year, we have a 40% rate of turnover in early childhood. And think about what that does to the ability to provide quality for families and for kids when every year you're training almost half of a new workforce. And think about the quality that you're able to provide to children if you're worried about simple things like paying your rent, if you're worried about, oh, can I go to the doctor this month for that cough I've now had for 3 weeks? COVID really has been a big reminder for that. Think about all the people that have to go to work sick and they're working with children. And so these are things that should very much be provided by the very hard work that they do. I mentioned COVID there. I want to stick with it a little bit, and I'm going to come to you first, Rochelle. COVID has obviously been an enormous disruption in all of our lives. Can you talk to me a little bit about what COVID has done in terms of changing the way that you provide care, and what are some of the things that you had to do to ensure the safety of your staff, of your kids. What does being a childcare center in a COVID reality look like?
So what it looks like is we're grateful to be here because there are a lot of childcare centers that did not return, right? So in the ramp up, we purchased sinks, outdoor sinks. So when children, teachers, staff come into the building, that's the first thing that they can do is wash their hands. We're taking temperature checks. So there's somebody at the door taking a temperature check. Not only that, we have face shields, we have masks, we have PPE. We are looking like astronauts pretty much every day, right? So on top of that, we had to hire an additional person just to clean the building. Like we're doing hourly cleanings. So I had to hire a person just to make sure that the center and staff is clean. If someone has COVID, we have to shut the classroom down for 14 days, which is scary for parents because then they hear it and then they're like, oh, I don't know if I can send my child back to that center and then it's scary for a director when that means I have to close my class for 14 days. That means that is more money that we can afford to pay for our teachers, our overhead, our lights. So, and we have lower ratios. So we've made sure that and change our times as well. So instead of our classrooms are now from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. So that way we can keep those children in their bubble. Everybody is a bubble. Every classroom is a bubble. I've had to do some additional construction so that we can create walls and have a gate on the fence, on the yard to make sure that those children stay in their bubble. So they're not going around in different areas and space. So it takes a lot of strategic planning to be a center who is open and trying to be the most safe center possible. Our teachers are getting weekly COVID tests. That is something that has also made the parents feel secure, right? And the staff as well. So we are doing a lot. We just want to make sure that everybody stays safe.
Thank you for that, Rochelle. And I want to note for everyone watching that COVID took everyone by surprise. So all of those changes you just heard were made in days, if at best weeks. And so it is an incredible amount of nimbleness that you've had to show on a very short timeline with very high stakes. Because like you said, obviously the last thing that anybody would want to see is an outbreak in a childcare center where kids are getting sick and families are getting sick and parents are getting sick. And so that's an incredible amount of work that went into that while being during a time where you were worried about whether or not you were going to even be able to stay open and survive. Barbie, I want to come to you with the same question. In your experience over the last year, what has COVID changed about the way that you do your work every day?
It has certainly changed a lot, and it's been an ongoing learning process. So we initially closed for about 3 months from March to June last year, during which we attempted distance learning, teaching for early childhood, which while it was great to keep those connections going, it was probably about as effective as you would imagine to try and teach toddlers over Zoom. But when we reopened, it was hard to try and to keep communication up with the masks on, to be bleaching surfaces on the hour while keeping the children at a safe distance, but still engaging with them, and adding all these protocols with the temperature taking, with the adapted drop off and pickup procedures in which we no longer see the parents inside our building anymore. It really took away a lot of the sense of community that we had on top of just the day-to-day challenges of teaching with the PPE and the sanitation. And just one example as well, we have 6 classrooms and we used to all gather on the yards together and play, and you would see 4-year-olds and 1-year-olds like fostering these cute little friendships. And now we have our bubbles. And so we have 30-minute time slots for each class, in which we go out by ourselves, clean up when we're done. And then the next class goes out, and these kids don't know each other anymore. They know there's other kids in the school, but they don't know each other. And it's really sad to just see that has happened to the community, despite all of the really great efforts that have been made by the teachers and directors and everyone else.
Barbie, I want to ask you a follow-up question there, because I didn't know that you didn't mention this when we first talked, that you tried to do Zoom learning for a toddler. Can you what does Zoom learning look like for a toddler? I'm assuming it didn't work very well, but what did you even try to do in that scenario?
So I would host these read along stories with my co-teachers at the time. At the time I was with 2 and 3-year-olds. And while I was also nannying a 3-year-old in my class. So I would be trying to read truckery rhymes while he's in the back telling me, don't sing that. So that was fun. As well as we were creating lesson plans to send out to the parents, trying to take a guess at what materials they had at home to see if they could make a caterpillar out of egg cartons and pipe cleaners, if they even had the time between trying to work their jobs remotely and also provide childcare for their children, as well as making blog posts. And then we had some teachers who were doing weekly sing-alongs with the kids as well, just to try and be like, hey, these are our faces, this still exists. You'll see these people again someday. But in terms of actually teaching them, it didn't feel like much of the education was really getting through, because we were relying on the parents who were under just as much stress as we were to just hold things together. So that was definitely really tough. And we were, despite any apprehension regarding COVID, we were so relieved when we were able to just get back in the classroom.
Absolutely. I can imagine the relief there. Bryce, Shanae, same question for you. What has COVID changed about the way that you do your work?
For me, of course, doing the Zoom lessons was like the only thing that kind of kept me together, because I'm a mover and I have to do stuff. So just, even though some days I would be talking to just a screen or a kid looking away from me at another screen. So, but that kept me alive because I needed to do something that made me feel like I was back in the class. But there was a whole nother ball of just uncertainty when you're coming back to the school. So I had to, reach out to someone to talk me through that stuck place of fear and anxiety that happened when it was time for me to go back to work, because I was like, I don't want to be a different type of teacher based off me fearing that I'm going to get COVID from my kids. So once I was able to come back to work, learning all of the new things that I had to do, that was another stressor, but just having the support from my team leaders just helped me to be able to continue. And no one's going to stop me from giving my kid a hug, or a high five or an elbow puck, or, talking about, now I have this mask. They're like, why are you wearing this? Are you a doctor? Why are you wearing this? Are you a nurse? And so we even had our first lesson when we came back. These are the things that we're going to look like based off coronavirus or COVID. You're going to have people that are going to have this mask. And, now that I have this mask, these are my happy eyes and these are my not so happy eyes. So we had to have a lot of different conversations, and they had to get comfortable with seeing me look like an astronaut or a doctor or whatever.
Thank you for that, Bryce. Shanae. Same question for you, Brandy. What has COVID changed about the way that you have to teach?
Well, in the beginning of COVID, returning back from COVID, I was working with the infants still, so it was a little difficult because they're babies, so of course they need to see your face, to see all your expressions. And since we started wearing masks and face shields, it was really difficult for the children to stay calm. They were always crying. So we really had to be detailed about how we were reacting to things they were doing, like, oh, I'm happy right now. These are my happy eyes. Wow, that's so exciting. So it was just difficult interacting with the children again. We had to sanitize everything 3 times as before, washing everything. So it was just a little difficult getting used to it in the beginning.
Thank you for that. And before I go to the next question, I want to remind folks that are tuned in that if you have any questions, you can submit them in the chat panel, and I'm happy to ask them to our panelists. If you joined us late, we are here in the I Am New Orleans Early Childhood Conversation with early learning teachers, Brandy Sanchez, Bryce Gresham, Barbie DeVoe, and Rochelle Wilcox. I'm Kenny Francis with Agenda for Children. So I have one more question for you guys before we get to questions from our attendees, is with the age range that you work with, what is your favorite thing developmentally about the kids that you work with and the ages that you work with? And I want to start with you, Breshni, on this one.
So my favorite thing about working with 3-year-olds is they remember the rules like they made them and created them and invented them. Every day is just a new page. Like being able to just make the classroom like this living and breathing thing is the thing that gets me up out of the bed and I'm ready to go to work. People are like, you actually like your job? I'm like, I actually like Mondays. I love my job because these kids, if I'm having a bad day, they kind of bring the love that you need that helps your veins to like pump blood to your heart. So just having this living and breathing classroom. If I ask them a question, they're going to answer that question and then ask me 10 other questions after that question. We just poured a pile of dirt outside and we spent like 30 to 40 minutes, our whole outside time in the dirt. So just having that liveliness for life at 3 is what I mostly love about them.
Thank you for that. Brandy, same question for you.
Something I really love about working with children is the trust they have in me. When I see them coming in through the door all happy, just makes me feel happy because I know that they feel comfortable and they're ready to learn. And when they feel comfortable, they are ready to learn and just work and have new skills.
Barbie, over to you.
I would say my favorite thing about working with the 1 and 2 year olds is just the openness that they come into the classroom with. I mean, they're already their own little people with personalities and viewpoints on the world, but they come in and are just ready to absorb anything we say or tell them or show them like a sponge. I mean, they'll overhear me asking my teacher, like, how's it going? And then I'll walk in a couple days later and they go, Barbie, how's it going? Even though they've never spoken like that before. And it's adorable and hilarious. And their hearts are open, their minds are open, and they have so much love to share. No one's told them not to do that yet, so they just come in. They're like, I love my friends. Of course, I'm going to give them a hug, and my teacher's going to help me ask for permission to do that. But I just love them so much. I want to share that. And I'm just happy to be here and ready to learn anything that y'all are ready to show me. And I just think that's really great.
Thank you for that. Same question for you, Rochelle.
So the best part about being in early care and education are the children, having them come in every day and seeing them grow from infancy to when they walk out as a 4-year-old going on to kindergarten is, I'm going to piggyback on what Ms. Bryce said, is just life for me. So when that infant smiles at you just because they can hear your voice, even though they can't see your face, it's like the world has opened, right? It's just like the sun has come out and it is shining and it's no humidity, right? So it is the best part. And when those 4-year-olds walk out with all of the confidence in the world and ready to take on kindergarten and beyond because they have not been stifled yet, right? They are ready to ask 10 questions, know that they're a good citizen. They have had that happy balance of academic rigor and social emotional skills. And that is what, and when parents come and say, thank you, and it doesn't happen often because, I think sometimes parents just think it's supposed to happen, which they're right. But when a parent comes back and say, thank you, or when I see one of my little people 10 years from, and they're just like, Miss Wilcox, or they call me Wilcox Academy, Miss Wilcox Academy. It is the best thing ever. So that's why we're still here. That's why it was not an option not to return. We were going to do whatever we needed to do to make sure that our little people had the best and the safest place to be.
I couldn't agree with all of you more. Having done this work myself, I agree with all those points. The two small things I would add is, and I've told you guys this before, one, Early childhood kids, 3, 4, 5 years old, they're the most honest people on the planet. There's nothing more funny than walk into a classroom and my kids would say that, Mr. Francis, you look nice today, with the emphasis on today. The other thing that I would say is watching a child learn how to read is like performing an actual magic trick. If for those of you who are watching this who have never taught before, I can't really describe to you the feeling of wonderment and amazement knowing that you took a child who often sometimes didn't even know the first letter of their first name and seeing them reading independently and knowing what that means for their lives. It's like a real life magic trick. It's amazing. With that, I want to get into some of the questions that I see coming into the chat here. And feel free, any of you, to take it. If you want to take it, just like raise your hand so I can see, and I'll go to you first. So the first question is, what system level or policy, city or state, shifts would you like to see, and how would that affect your daily work in the classroom? Who wants to take that one first? Barbie, the wait time worked.
Well, I can't say I'm an expert in policy on a state level. I guess I would just like to see a really active investment in our child care centers, and that investment being shown through funding. Because I mean, if we could put funds into our child care centers and consistently put them there, not, well, anything is helpful. Just a one-time payment, it doesn't fund seats for children. It doesn't fund teacher paychecks forever. If you're just doing it, then it's nice. It's a great gesture, but to just see regular funding being continually invested in our child care center so that we can pay our teachers a wage that is fair, so that we can offer scholarships and financial aid to the children who really need it, and so that we can make sure the facilities that we're operating in are being maintained and well stocked with all the materials these kids need. I would just love to see anything like that.
Brandy or Bryce, anything to add to that?
I totally agree. You said it wonderfully. Like I think that once you start from the infrastructure, then we can go anywhere. And I think that early child care is the infrastructure of just life, of, you know, creating a human being that wants to actually be a good vessel. I don't know, to be a good person, to be able to have this ripple effect. We want to have ripple effects in our life. And I think that once you start young, then that's the key. And so investing in our children as young as we can is the best thing that we can do.
Anything like to add here, Brandy?
No, I would just have to agree with my peers that, yeah, we should have more people trying to help out, and so we can have more materials for the kids, not just the teachers, but also for the kids. And that's about it.
Thank you. Rochelle, the next question is directly for you, so I'm going to come to you. The question is, if I can scroll back up. Rochelle, where are you getting the resources you need to supplement what the parents and public sources provide? What's the most important thing that children need in the classroom that's being sacrificed that money could provide?
So the most important thing in the classroom that is being are the teachers. Teachers are leaving early care and education every day because Amazon's paying $16 an hour, or somewhere else is paying more than what they're. So when we have these three ladies are just a sample of what is going on in early care and education. And when they leave, not because they don't love their jobs, but they can't afford to take care of themselves and their families. That is the most essential part of early learning center. So where am I getting resources? So for us, we have blended funding. So we have an early Head Start partnership. We also partner with the city, and we also have private pay, and we take the state subsidy. So we take all of that funding and blend it so that we can pay teachers. However, there are many, many, many months that I do not take a salary, that I just can't afford to take a salary to make sure that my teachers get paid, to make sure that the overhead is paid for. So we that's where that's where the money comes from. But what I would like to say, I did see a question that asks what is needed from the state legislator. What I would like to say is that right now, child care assistance is being funded at about $35, $36 per day. What we need is about $60 per day. That is what we need in order to make sure that that is funded. There are a lot of child care centers that don't take child care assistance just because it does not provide you with enough to care for that child, right? And then parents are not applying for child care assistance because even though they might get it, they can't meet the copay. Increase the funding for child care assistance, make it sustainable. And then that way parents know that they would have a safe space, a quality space to put in for their child, to put their child in. So that would be one thing that I would suggest.
Thank you for that, Rochelle. And I want to echo two things that she said there and really drive them home. Is that one, she talked about the most valuable resource being sacrificed is the teachers. And again, I want to state the number, 40%, a 40% rate of turnover every single year. And for those of you who are watching this, who have any knowledge of the types of expenditures and policies we have as a state, our state pours a lot of money into different ways to try to raise the quality of our childcare centers and our early childhood education across the state. Imagine how much of that money is being wasted because every year we're starting over almost half of the workforce. So the investments that we're making, the money that we're spending is not being capitalized on because we're not retaining these really, really dedicated professionals because we haven't made it possible for them to stay. And so we're not going to start to see the real gains that we need to see as a state until we realize that our most important resource, our teachers, are the ones that we are not investing in and the ones that we're wasting when we're not investing in the ways we need to. And thank you for doing my job a little bit and going to the next question, Rochelle. Appreciate that. The one thing I want to add to that and take a little personal point or privilege on this is that the thing that I would say to a state legislature, which I hope a few of you are watching tonight, is that there's a lot of conversations happening in the Capitol about all of the funding that came through the various stimulus packages for the state of Louisiana and how we need to think about our budget in a way that these are one-time money that have to be spent over a certain period of time, most of them over the next couple of years, and they're non-renewable. There's a lot of conversation in the Capitol about we cannot do renewable things with non-renewable money. It's the same thing for childcare. All of you by now would have heard of a very large number, almost $800 million, that the state of Louisiana is receiving for childcare. And I will remind you that the math works the same way. It is one-time money. So we can spend it one time. We cannot go and fund seats with this. We cannot fund families with this. We certainly cannot give teachers more pay with this because it's going to run out. What it takes is the state of Louisiana stepping up and saying that this is a valuable resource that we need to fund. It is a public good. And we need to invest in it as such. And it has to be done with sustainable and dedicated funding that renews every single year, because this isn't something that we just need to do one time. You're not going to solve this problem that way. I'm going to go and see what else we have here. Okay, so a question for all of you. The question is, go back up. Sorry, I'm trying to get my screen to go back up. The question is about the differences. Is there a difference for you between the terms childcare and early childhood education? And if so, what are those nuances or differences or similarities? Who wants to take this one?
For me, childcare is basically, the words that we dread as early childcare educators is that babysitting idea. I'm just sitting here providing good quality care, but not teaching or enhancing anything. Maybe the child is watching TV or iPadding or whatever. But when I think about my job or what we're doing, we're actually, feeding and edifying the child to be their greatest self outside of technology. Some classrooms may use technology to enhance, but we're getting in there and helping them to connect those different things that's going to help their brains to grow. And we're making them lifelong learners. That's a difference between the two.
Any thoughts on that, Brandy or Barbie or Rochelle?
Yeah, I definitely agree with Bryce Shanae, and I think childcare can be used as sort of an umbrella term, a generalization, and at times a simplification of what exactly is being provided. Because childcare could be, staying with grandma. Childcare could be hiring a babysitter, and it's not that those are bad options, but when we are providing early childhood education, we are tracking their development. We are ensuring that they are hitting these milestones, and we are addressing these situations as they come up. And it's so much more than just watching them and keeping them alive. And so I think it is a term that can be interchanged. I may have said the term childcare at some point tonight without thinking super deeply about it, but I think when it's being applied, people really need to understand, like, early childhood education, we are teaching those kids. It doesn't matter if they're 6 weeks old or 6 years old. They are being taught every single day, with every statement that is being said towards them, with every toy that is laid out on the table. There is intention there to make sure that they are growing and learning and developing every single moment that they are at school.
Thank you for that, Barbie. Brandy or Rochelle, any thoughts on that as well?
I just want to add one quick thing, that the biggest thing that bothers me is the professionalism in the term, right? So if you say childcare, it may be like Barbie said, grandma, aunt, kinship care, whatever it may be. But for me, whether you say childcare or early education provider or educator, these women, mostly women, we do have some men, Kenny's one of them, they're professionals. They deserve to be treated as professionals. It is, they deserve to have professional pay. These women come, these teachers come to work every day and put their best foot forward. Children learn most of what, 90% of what they're going to learn by the time that they are 4. So these early education providers, teachers, childcare, whatever you want to do, deserve to be treated professionally. So put some respect on childcare or early care and education provider, whatever the term you use it respectfully.
Thank you for that, Rochelle. Okay, we have time for one last one because we're running out of time here. The last question here, I think it's a great question, is how do you take care of your healthcare needs? And before I let you guys answer, I want to say for everyone here listening, if you didn't know, most childcare teachers don't have access to health insurance, but I want to give them a chance to answer. Who would like to take this one? Go ahead, Brandy.
Okay. Well, I'll be honest. I really don't take care of my health needs because I don't have the money or the insurance or the time to go. So I do find it difficult. And that's one of my main, I guess, problems that I have.
Thank you, Brandy. Barbie or Bryce, any thoughts on that?
So we are really fortunate at Abiona House that within the last year, several months after COVID started, we had a staff that, communicated with each other, banded together to bring this issue to our administration that we really did not feel comfortable returning without healthcare. We had a director who went to bat for us and a board who worked with her, and we were able to secure healthcare for our staff for the first time, as far as I'm aware, which was amazing and so validating. But at the same time, I went to the doctor for the first time since I got this health insurance just a couple weeks ago. And so it's taking a big chunk out of my paycheck, and I'm so grateful for it. But due to work and exhaustion sometimes, and also just fear of co-pays, this is a sentiment echoed by a lot of my coworkers. We feel as though we're not even able to fully utilize this health insurance because we just don't have the capability to go to the doctor for all of our various needs as often as we want to. And so it's a struggle that remains even despite these great strides that have been made.
Thank you, Barbie. Last word to you, Bryce.
So we do have, what is that, Aflac or something like that. And You can go to the doctor and they'll pay off a little bit. But for myself, before that, I like to take care of myself because I want to be here. You know, I like to exercise. I like to eat right. And before I would go to what is that, St. Thomas Health Clinic, and just make sure that I'm mentally and physically together. Because if I want to be there for these little people, I have to make sure that I'm there for myself first and for my children. So I like to eat well and exercise so that I can be here.
Thank you all. And thank you all for joining us. I know that we're out of time. I know the Kellogg Foundation will give me a little second here. So if you've listened to all of this and you find yourself sitting here, well, what can I do about this? I want to remind you all what one of the questions was that we have a legislative session that is starting on Monday. And this is our annual opportunity for our state to do something about this, our annual opportunity to make real investments towards solving this problem. And there's a few things that folks could look into. There is an effort going on related to sports betting, taxation dollars, and what we're going to do with that as a state. There's an effort related to creating an income tax credit for teachers, which would include childcare teachers. There's other efforts around funding both locally and statewide related to early childhood. So my charge to you, if you're sitting here wondering what you can do about this, is to get involved. Get involved and stay active in the conversations and reach out to your legislatures, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Thank you all for joining us tonight. My name is Kenny Francis. Thank you, Bryce Shanae. Thank you, Brandy. Thank you, Barbie. Thank you, Rochelle. Thank you to the Kellogg Foundation for putting this on, and good night, everybody.